Hey everybody, welcome back to Everyday Journey. Today we're going to go with another episode of putting this mill back together. Ran into a slight problem. I'd already made this right here, went to go check my thrust bearings, and one side it goes on just fine. Bearings themselves go on just fine. This other side doesn't go on very good at all actually. So I think we're going to have to widen that out a little bit. Can't really complain because I ended up getting this for free. I ordered it. It was like 27 bucks or something like that, and because they took so long shipping it, they just gave it to me. So I can't complain. All I have to do though is widen that hole just a little bit. I'm not going to do it anything precise. I think I'm just going to mount it up in the lathe and just go ahead and file it real quick, and then we'll get to putting the rest of it back together. So you may ask, why am I not going to actually bore this out to the correct diameter? And that's because I've got a Harbor Freight lathe. Picked this up fairly cheap, so I can't really complain about that. But it is not accurate and needs a lot of adjusting. I've already spent a lot of time trying to get this tailstock lined up so things would work right. So when it comes to things like this, where I just have to get it close enough, I'm just going to go ahead and file it out because it's just easier. See if that's actually doing anything. No, and it's hardened, so I think it'd be better off getting the diamond file. Let's check it out. Alright, so what I was doing wasn't working at all. So I went with another tried and true method. This is just a transfer punch out of a set, actually came from Harbor Freight. And it just takes some emery cloth and I wrap it around it, tape it to it, and then wrap it around it in the direction, so as I go in that direction, it stays. It's almost like a flap disc. And then I just took the bearing, well, not the bearing itself, but the outer wall of the bearing, and just sit there and ran it around and around and around until I finally got that ID closer to what I need. So now, whenever I put it on here, it actually goes on. It's still a little tight, but I think it's kind of mushroomed a little on the end of this shaft, which wasn't done by me, but given as old as this thing is, who knows, because right here it fits, slip fit, nice and easy. But there on the end, it's a little harder. Alright, so I just kind of dry fit this in here. The shaft is just in here, got the gear in place, but as you can see, it has quite a bit of play right there, and I don't think it should have that much play. I mean, I think there should be some, but I don't think there should be that much. So I'm going to try to center this some, and then measure the distance on each side and go ahead and just make two. I'm going to use what's on hand. Oil light would probably be, an oil light bushing or a washer would probably be better. Alright, so two things. First off, my Delrin is square stock, and that doesn't really work unless you got a 4-jaw chuck in the lathe. So guess I'm just going to go ahead and put this back together the way it was. Second thing, the end on this, if you watched the previous video, you could see, well actually I guess if you watched 2 videos ago, whenever I was taking apart the head of this to figure out what was wrong here, you could see that every time I messed with this, anything I got off of here was really difficult. So I got the micrometer and I checked, and sure enough, right here, this has probably been hammered at one point in time. Therefore, it was kind of mushroomed just a little bit, but it was enough to make everything pretty difficult. So I went ahead and put it up in the lathe and went ahead and just filed it down and then checked it, and it's pretty close to where it needs to be now. So hopefully everything will go back together quicker or easier. So my next thing is actually to get these bearings in here. So this just goes the same way it came out. Put this in first, slide it through, and alright, so now that piece is in. We just got to put the other gear up from the bottom and then slide the pin through so that we can actually hold all that in place, and then just grease it liberally. So there it is, and as you can see, as I turn it, It does what it's supposed to do. Seems like it's fairly smooth. We won't know for sure until later on. I just have to put the set the set screw on that bottom pin, grease it up, and then go ahead and start putting the gear and stuff, or the crank arm and stuff back on it. And there we go. Seems like it works fine. Now we got to put this thing up on top of the mill. Not going to be an easy task, but somehow we'll figure it out. Actually, it might be a good idea to go ahead and take this crank handle back off too, because again, it's added weight, and it's also something that, in case things slip and slide and whatever else, it could possibly break this crank handle, and that's one more thing we got to try and find for something that's old, almost as old as me. So we'll probably do the same thing with some other things. There you go. Take off this one. A lot of these are probably going to have to be remade later on. But yeah, we'll try to make this as light as possible for that. On the other side over here, we can go ahead and take these handles off. Again, they're just going to be something that's going to get broken. Looks to me like these things are pretty much shot anyway. And then last but not least, we're going to take off this crank here. Hopefully it's a 5mm set screw again. Oh, it is, and it's fairly loose. Well, set screw was. The handle itself, not so much. So let me see if I can find my puller. Alright, so we got this thing on here. Let's see if we can get it to come off. So that's one less thing to break while we're trying to put this thing together. Well, it's a good thing that happened, because I would have never been able to put it together that way. This piece right here, which is actually the gear that goes all the way down the column, that right there has to be in there when it goes on top of there, because there are no teeth at the top and the bottom of it. So and you can't get in there to put the gear in and all that stuff while it's in there. So basically it has to be on it while it goes onto the column. So I've kind of rigged something up, hopefully it'll work, and I'm going to try it again. Well, it's definitely on there. Now it's just a matter of working it down. Well, looks like my repair was a success. See right here, it actually raises and lowers it like it's supposed to. So now it's just a matter of putting everything back together. That thing is definitely not straight, so gonna have to fix that later, but at least it's on there. I don't know if you can see it or not, but what we're going to do, and this is, of course is not locked down, so I got to hold this back, but because if I push on this, it's going to spin the column. But we just want to put some tension, pry the motor back a little bit, check our tension up here on all the belts. For now that looks okay. And then we pull this tensioner. Well, it's basically just a pin that holds it back. We pull it out, have it go against the motor. I'm actually going to pull it a little further because it's not really, I figure it's going to release some of the tension. And then we tighten this bolt down here, right here. We'll tighten it back up. I believe this is either 14 millimeter or 9/16. But this will lock that pin out, which will hold our tension on the motor. We'll try that. See, I've got a problem with this. This plate that holds the motor on, most likely this motor is either too big or somebody put one that was too big on it at one time. But it's starting to pull this plate down. It's starting to bend it a little at where it hinges. So it kind of helps that this pin right here fits underneath a little bit of a flange where this flares out. So it can kind of help hold this end up a little bit. But we'll see how it goes. I may have to kind of rework this whole thing right here so that it'll work with that motor. Alright, looking at this from a distance, I can see that that motor is not up high enough to be able to be equal in that pulley. If you can see, like right here, it looks like it slopes downwards. So I'm going to go ahead and, I'm not going to move the motor any because I leveled it, so it's pretty good there. But I need to raise that pulley up some where it's mounted on the shaft of the motor here. I'm going to go ahead and pull the belts back off, get with the set screws, and go ahead and raise that up some. I don't want to have it at a different height than the other pulley. It'll just wear the belt faster. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that off camera, and then we'll put the lid on and put the cap on top of the column. Alright, so it's put together, everything except for the wiring. Of course, I think there was a switch on this side, a light that went across the top, which I'm not sure if I want to put on there or not. And of course, got to wire up the motor. I do know that it all works though, because I did see it work. But I need to get another plug for the other end of it, because I only have the one 220 outlet. And I've actually got my welder connected to that, and I'd like to keep that in place, so I need to get another end so I can just plug and unplug it whenever I need to. This won't be permanently wired up. I wish I could, but I'd have to put conduit throughout here and wire it directly, and I'm not sure how that'll work. So we'll see how it goes. For now though, the elevation crank handle, that's what I was fixing. You can see here, it definitely goes up and down like it should. It's a little tighter going up, and that's because I've got more weight on here now. But it seems to handle it. So I don't have the head locked in yet. The lock here, let's see, this right here is good to go. Goes up and down like it should. When we engage this, the fine adjust or the finer adjust works like it should. Believe this locks it in place. Yeah, because it doesn't want to go up and down, so that works. Not sure what this spring here is for. I'm going to have to look at that and see. It's probably going to have to come off of there. I'm going to have to figure out what it is, what to do with it. Um, I am supposed to have a elevation, I guess like a rule right here. Don't remember if this had it on there. I'm going to have to take a look at the previous videos to see if that was on there. If not, I'm going to have to make one. I did get the collet out of here. I've only got one collet for this thing. It's a 1/2 inch R8 collet. So I probably will have to get another collet set for this so that I can, or just get everything in 1/2 inch. I don't know. Let's see. I did actually order a Jacob's chuck for this. It's already got the R8 shank on it, and I believe I got the 14N because I thought that right there would be really good for drilling operations. It's supposed to have the ball bearings and stuff like that in it. But we'll see. It's a used one. It wasn't cheap, but it wasn't as expensive as a new one, that's for sure. And so the next things that need to happen with this is, one, need to power it up. Need to test out the belts, get this thing spinning and operational again so I can see, get some chips going on it, see how that's going. Maybe do some tests to see how how everything is aligning up, because I'm sure that this thing is nowhere close to perfect, and that there's going to always be a lot of setup involved. Not really sure how well, how good this is. So whenever I'm actually moving the table, it may be higher over here than over here. It may be higher front to back. Who knows? But it's one of those things we're just going to have to work with and deal with however we have to. But I'll get into that later too. Everything seems to be functional on it for the most part. And the biggest thing this thing needs is it needs to be cleaned up completely. And I don't like this paint job. The original paint is somewhere around right here, if you can see that. It's kind of a dark green. At some point in time somebody painted over it with this kind of a teal green color, and I know you can't see it very well in the pictures or in the video here, but I know you can see this top, this yellow top. That looks like somebody tried to make this thing look like a John Deere tractor, and I don't like it. So eventually, if I get the time, and little by little I think I will, clean this thing up. And I like the colors for like Bridgeport or black, but I think I like those colors. When I eventually get it to that, if I see if I keep this thing long enough to do that, I should, because I don't see myself finding anything any cheaper, but we'll see how it works. But yeah, eventually I'd probably like to paint it up. But the biggest thing is get it operational first. Get everything cleaned up and moving right. Get everything oiled up and everything, and just that way I can thoroughly test it. And then if I don't want it after that, somebody else can maybe take it off my hands. Who knows? But I wouldn't get another one I wouldn't get this one gone until I got another one. That's for sure. Because I like the idea of knowing that I can make something for a change. So anyway, there's a few places on here that need some handles. There's supposed to be some knobs on the end of this. There's actually one of these, I believe, or maybe several of these, missing on the locking mechanism on the back. So I'm going to have to make something like that or buy something. But little by little, we'll see what we got to do to get this thing in shape. So I appreciate you guys watching, as always. Maybe you could get a better view of my face here. Later on, I'll get some better light. I did install light above, which is fine for working, but it doesn't do any good for showing my face. So I will in the future get some a better light in here for this. That way you can see me a little better. We can talk through this. So anyway, you got any questions? Send them my way. You got any answers for me? Send those my way. If I'm doing things wrong, let me know. Of course, by this point, it's probably too late. I probably already messed it up, whatever it is. But definitely appreciate you guys watching. And as always, take care.